Hello everyone, welcome to my first video. In this video we're going to be bringing back some fun to the boring Windows backgrounds. Don't get me wrong, I love the default modern abstract shapes and nature scenes that come standard with Windows, but there's no movement and there's not much life. So let's try fix that. Windows actually used to have this feature. It was called ActiveDesktop. ActiveDesktop allowed you to set a web page as your desktop background. Windows also used to allow animated GIFs as backgrounds, but this project will hopefully fix both of those things. We'll be using Visual Studio for this project. You can download the Community Edition for free if you want to follow along, or clone the repository from my GitHub, links in the description. So our first step will be to open Visual Studio, and we will create a new project. Search for WinForms, and we want to select the .NET Framework version. We'll call this ActiveDesktop and create the project. The next step, we will go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager, and Manage NuGet Packages for Solution. Then in the Browse tab, we're going to search for a NuGet package called C# and select the one that says WinForms. Just install that to our project. Go back to our forms, open the toolbox, and we're going to drop in Chromium web browser into the form. And just like that, you have power of Chrome inside of your Windows form. Because we want to set this as our background, we also don't want the form borders, and search for form border style and set that to none. Firstly, to test if our browser is working, we will set the URL of our browser to a website and test that. There we go, we can see Google loads inside of our form. The next step is to set up a local server. I will go back to the design view, go into the toolbox and search for a background worker and drop that onto the form. And go to the Events tab, double click on the Do Work function. To start this background worker, we can simply do background worker dot run worker async. Inside of our background worker, we want to start up a new HTTP listener. Then we need to add a prefix with a custom port that preferably won't be selected by any other application. So we'll do 12345. And then we will start our listener. Next, we want to bind an event system to our listener so that it listens for requests from a web page and returns the response. Let's create this get context callback method. From the result, we can get the listener. Next, we will create a HTTP listener context. Now we want to handle the incoming request and response. Then we need the file name that we will be referencing. So this will be the landing page of the website that we will be hosting on our form. Then we will combine the path with our application starter path, and if that file exists, we will create a buffer with all of the contents of the file. Then in our response, we'll set the response context type to whatever the MIME type is of the request that's coming in. Then we will get the context response length as well as the context response output stream. If the file does not exist, return a response of file not found. Close the response and call the begin get context again to wait for the next request. Now we need to change our URL path to our server path. So in our Solution Explorer, we are going to create a new folder. We'll call it Web. And inside of this folder, we are going to add a new item, which will be in the Web tab HTML page, and we will call it index.html. We will just have an h1 tag and say hello world. Now we need to navigate to that, to properties on the index file, and set the copy to output directory to copy always. Now we can test that, and we can see our hello world. The next step to our solution would now be to set this application as the desktop background. You will find a Win32 wrapper that I found on the internet somewhere. You can get it from my Git solution. Include that in our solution. So show all hidden files. You'll see that it's at the bottom. We'll include this into the project and just make sure that it's under the same namespace. We need to set the start position of our screen. We have to change the form start position to manual so that we can determine where we want to place the screen. Then we need to set the location of the form. Then we just want to set the form's width and height to the screen's width and height. And finally, we just need to set the application as your background. Include a snippet of code. And that should be it. When we hit Start Now, you will see that Hello World is on the background. And to show that, we can right click, and I still have the full context menu of the standard desktop. Now let's make it look a little bit better. If, for example, we wanted the web page to get coordinates from the application, then we would need some kind of object to pass between the web page and the application. To do this, I have created an object called boundObject and created a method called getMouseCoordinates. Inside of it, we have a new point, and it calls a method called getCursorPosition. I've included a DLL import called user32 and static external boolean of getCursorPosition. We have to register this object to the JavaScript of the page. I will register a JavaScript object, and we will register the bound object to our new object. In our page, I have copied some code from this CodePen project from Lokhtar. I've copied all of the HTML elements, the CSS and the JavaScript inside of our file. All we need to do is change their function to an asynchronous function. We have a object that tracks our mouse coordinates. We have a new interval set up, so on every 100 milliseconds it will do a request to the server. We are returning the X and the Y of the cursor, passing that JSON string into a JSON object and setting the mouse X and mouse Y, which the rest of the code requires to determine where the mouse position is. Now if I run this code, the snowflakes are reacting to my mouse coordinates, even though this is still just the standard desktop. And that's it. That's all we have for this video. Hope to see you in the next one.